Here are 10 of the most shocking plot lines in The Simpsons. Getting us started today is the episode Halloween of Horror, which holds a rather special statistic in the series for being the first fully canon episode in the series after 27 years. So don't expect the shocking moment to be that everyone dies. Then again, who knows? Maybe that could happen. The story begins on the day before Halloween as the Simpsons are finishing up their decorating. Homer realizes they need to replace some destroyed decorations, so they head out to one of those Halloween pop-up stores. And because this episode came out before 2017, it turns out that Apu is the one running the store too. Just as Apu finishes complaining about the pop-up people working under him for being lazy, one of them tries to get some cash directly from Homer by selling him 4 decorations without Apu knowing. But with Homer being Homer, he instantly tells Apu without realizing it, and he gets the 3 employees fired. So, naturally, they try to threaten Homer, but he doesn't quite get it yet.
I know when I'm sorry, and I'm sorry now! You guys don't know me at all.
Later that night, Homer and the kids go to the Krusty Land Halloween Horror Night attraction, with Lisa being especially excited since this is the first time she's old enough to attend it. But, as it turns out, it's a lot scarier than she thought it was going to be. Like a lot scarier. So scary, in fact, that Lisa literally collapses from fear, forcing the ride operators to shut the attraction down so she can be taken home.
We have located and are removing the baby that thinks this is real.
The next day, Halloween itself, Lisa is still so terrified that not only does she refuse to wear her costume at all, but she even locks herself inside a locker at school until Marge comes to get her after reliving last night's terror. Marge says they need to take down the Halloween decorations for Lisa's sake. Homer tries to argue, but soon realizes Marge is right when Lisa resorts to comforting herself with an old stuffed animal from when she was a toddler. Well, the tail of a stuffed animal anyway, named Taily, of course.
Breaks my heart that Lisa can't deal with her emotions without a crutch.
Well, kids are weak, Marge.
As Marge takes Bart and Maggie trick-or-treating, Homer stays at the house with Lisa. But then the door rings, and instead of trick-or-treaters, it's the 3 men that Homer got fired yesterday. And unfortunately for Homer, they aren't there for candy.
Creepy nursery rhyme, like in every movie.
Despite Marge's efforts to get Bart into a different neighborhood to go trick-or-treating, all of their plans end up being too late, and Bart misses out on Halloween entirely. Although he doesn't miss the drunken, half-naked grown-ups celebrating Halloween now that the kids have all gone to bed, though that probably isn't as fun or sanitary. Meanwhile, back at home, the pop-up store guys soon end up sneaking into the house, scaring Homer and Lisa.
Get out of here! Come on, this way!
The men go on to trash the house as Homer and Lisa hide in the attic. Lisa is rightfully terrified of all this, but Homer says that while he's scared too, she can't just let fear shut down her brain, especially since she's got the only good brain between the two. Realizing he's right, Lisa comes up with a plan to signal for help using the decorations in the attic. But in the process of doing this, they accidentally alert the men downstairs and are forced to hide on the roof. Homer realizes it's too windy to light the fireworks he's set up to call for help, so Lisa, mustering up all of her courage, offers him Taily, which, thanks to all of the face oil it has absorbed over the years, lights up easily enough to draw the help of the drunken, half-naked adults partying across Springfield. The episode comes to a close with Lisa having overcome her terror, Bart getting some Halloween partying in after all now that all the decorations are all back up, and the pop-up guys getting arrested. But don't worry, Chief Wiggum says he'll help them get jobs at a 99-cent store once they're out, so even they get a happy ending. Halloween of Horror tops us off on this list of shocking episodes because, let's be honest here, an episode about 3 random drug addicts breaking into your house to beat you up in front of your kids is pretty freaking terrifying. But is it as terrifying as someone threatening the lives of a bunch of puppies? I'll let you be the judge of that. When the family tries to take their dog to see what's wrong, he manages to squeeze out the window and runs back to the dog racing track where they first got him. When they go looking for him, they see Santa's little helper racing along the track with the other dogs, up until he catches up with a particular female dog and starts to, get busy with her. The owner of the dog freely gives her to the family, as racing dogs always lose the racing spirit when they fall in love. Nature takes its course the same way it always does.
Hey, look! A really small dog just fell out of Santa's girlfriend.
Stand being separated, creating a whole new problem. But really, he's just stealing the puppies while they have their backs turned.
Honestly, sir, you just don't put the effort into your schemes that you used to.
He walks into another room and explains to Smithers that he wants to make a tuxedo out of the fur of the puppies. And he does this through a musical number, obviously. Horrified, the kids try to rescue the puppies by leading them down a laundry laundry chute, but Burns, through unexplained means, somehow gets there first and insists on keeping the dogs even though they aren't even his, the puppies. But Burns just pulls out a loaded handgun and threatens to kill them all anyway. But even Burns isn't that heartless, and he decides to keep all the dogs alive. Good thing for Burns too, because the puppies all go on to become world champion race dogs, netting him over $10 million in award money. And I mean, duh. What else would he be doing? While obviously no cartoon puppies were actually shot in this episode, that's still a pretty intense plot to just throw out there, don't you think? Especially that last joke at the end, which, funny enough, actually ties into the plot of this next episode. Things get started in whiskey business when Moe tries to take his own life in the bar's storage room, while Lenny, Carl, and Homer can't be bothered to notice his literal cries for help. Moe climbs up on a chair and puts a noose around his neck, and he's interrupted by one of Bart's prank calls, asking for a Mr. Moe Ron. Moe gets so angry that he accidentally knocks the chair over and ends up, well, hanging. Luckily, the beam he's hanging from breaks, alerting the others in the bar and making Homer revive Moe using CPR to the rhythm of How Deep Is Your Love, because the other song is too on the nose. Afterward, Marge suddenly shows up, angry that Homer was here instead of buying groceries like he was supposed to.
Homer Simpson!
The woman I love!
But Homer gets out of trouble by revealing what happened. Unlike the others, Marge decides to try and help change Moe's outlook on life for the better by taking him on a road trip to Capital City. At one point, they all chip in to buy Moe a new suit, which actually does help cheer him up a bit. While back in Springfield, Bart builds a water slide contraption from the roof that nearly results in getting Grandpa killed.
I don't want to die! I want to still be a burden!
Luckily, he's still okay, but now Bart has to take care of Grandpa until he recovers, and while it is more fun than he thought it would be at first...
Now let's say we turn the hot water on and off while your father's taking a shower.
Bart wonders how long it's going to take for Grandpa to get better, up until he discovers that Grandpa has recovered. Bart's mad at first, but when Grandpa says he was just using the injury as an excuse to spend time with him, Bart forgives the lie. And that's pretty much it for the side plot. There's a thing with Lisa and holograms of dead celebrities, but we don't have time for that. As for Moe, he's finally happy enough to bother cleaning up the bar thanks to the confidence the new suit brings him. Because of this, two venture capitalists happen to enter the bar, and after they taste some of Moe's home-brewed liquor, they offer to make Moe rich by selling it as a product. Moe is skyrocketing to the top as he leaves a rooftop party with the investors, but things take a turn when his suit gets caught in the elevator and begins unraveling. He later turns up at the Simpson house, depressed that his magic suit is ruined. Marge does manage to convince him that it was his confidence that was improving his life, not the suit. But when Moe goes to the stock exchange to open his whiskey up to public trading, he quickly tanks the entire launch with his Moe-ness, which is only a little depressing. And so the episode ends with Moe back to his old life at the bar. It wasn't the most consistently shocking episode out of the whole lot, but there is still something worth saying about a whole plot being based around a guy nearly leaving the Simpsons planet for good. But you know what's even more shocking than that? Getting put on death row for a murder that you didn't do. And trust me, I am trying to resist the urge to make any more shocking jokes about this one. Obviously, Marge instantly falls in love with the gift.
How much money did he piss away on this?
But the peacefulness of the pond is quickly ruined when a screaming caterpillar decides to make its home at the pond. Homer thinks it's in pain and decides that crushing it to death under his foot is the best option. It doesn't make it more than a couple days.
Oh, fine, I'll go back to the beginning.
But it turns out he can, and is sentenced to 200 hours of community service. This leads Homer to deliver Meals on Wheels to the elderly, which do soon end up talking, and after a while, it becomes clear that Myrna is taking advantage of his helpfulness, so Marge tries to go and talk to her about this, but this only results in Marge service hours.
I'll do them, and then I'm out of here.
But things take a turn when the two hear a scream and rush to find that a man with brain pretty fast because you really can't count on old Gil for anything, and they're both sentenced to death by the judge. Marge starts crying over all the things they'll miss, such as the kids growing up and having their own children. So, which, let me just say, is kind of dark and a little romantic, but mostly dark. And it only gets darker from here as Homer marches on the Green Mile to the electric chair, and Homer staring at Carmen Electra's breasts. Because when are you ever gonna get another opportunity like that?
Homer, my face is up here.
I've made my choice.
And while all that was a shocking turn of events for sure, The hook for this episode is as simple and to the point as you could hope for. It's Christmas time in Springfield, Bart discovers an abandoned nuclear silo, and Sideshow Bob shows up to kill him. What more could you want? Gone Boy gets started with the Simpsons coming home from a vacation in a rental SUV, and we briefly see Homer knock over a dumpster full of trash that was just picked up by a bunch of prisoners, and among them is none other than Sideshow Bob. When they return to the rental place, Homer realizes that they've returned it with more gas in the tank than when they left, which is obviously a problem.
Nobody, and I mean nobody, calls me Santa.
So Homer drives off to waste the extra quarter of gas in the rental. At some point, Bart has to use the bathroom, so he wanders off into the woods to take care of business, and he discovers a covered up hole with a sign that says "Do not jump on," which Bart immediately jumps on and falls through. When he wakes up a little while later, Bart flips on a power switch and discovers that he's inside an old, top-secret military missile silo.
Dud. Ay, caramba!
The entire town is out looking for Bart, along with the highway side prisoners from before, including Sideshow Bob. Because what's a wintertime episode without a psychotic criminal trying to kill a 10-year-old? Bart tries to escape the silo, but the old ladder leading out of the bunker breaks and sends him falling back inside. He does manage to find a phone though, but he just uses it to prank call Moe again before the thing catches on fire. The next morning, Milhouse manages to find Bart while searching through the woods, but when he goes to the Simpsons' house to get help, Lisa hugs him thinking that Bart is already dead, so Milhouse decides not to tell the truth. Not exactly best friend behavior, if you ask me. When the news reaches Bob, he becomes depressed, thinking that he missed the chance to kill Bart himself. But after a brief, weird hallucination, Bob manages to escape from prison, convinced that Bart is still alive.
I won't believe he's dead until I've made soup from his bones!
Why do I keep giving them scissors?
Bart manages to get the phone working long enough to call Marge, letting her know he's alive, before the phone really catches on fire this time. At the same time, Bob shows up and forces Milhouse to lead him to Bart by singing light opera. Terrifying, I know. Soon enough, Bob arrives at the bunker along with Milhouse, and he ties both him and Bart to the top of the missile, still inside the silo. He then somehow manages to turn both launch keys by stretching himself across the control console, and now the missile has 5 minutes to launch. Then, Bart asks why Sideshow Bob is doing all of this, and Bob realizes, after a quick phone call to the therapist he stabbed, that he doesn't want to kill Bart anymore. So Sideshow Bob lets the kids go. The missile still launches, but don't worry, it only blew up some art critics, so no big deal. The episode ends with Bob back in prison 6 months later when he finally feels happy. And, weirdly enough, we also get another joke about people dying to the electric chair.
Well, I won't be needing his file anymore. And if you're interested, tomorrow's 9 o'clock appointment just opened up.
I don't know what was more shocking, the part where Sideshow Bob let go of his hatred and let Bart live, or the part where Milhouse was fully committed to pretending his best friend was dead just for some attention from his sister. The final episode of this first Simpsons season has it all, really. From feelings of neglect, to a romantic night out, to a woman tying up and gagging the kids. Even an extended version of the intro that you might not have even seen before. Some enchanted evening doesn't have the most enchanting of beginnings. After yet another hectic morning where her efforts go unappreciated, Marge finds herself calling radio station psychiatrist Dr. Marvin Monroe and spilling her guts about feeling unappreciated. Homer is worried that Marge is going to leave him because she thinks he's a pig. Everyone agrees that he is, of course, but that's not the point. After being convinced by Moe to treat Marge right, Homer sets out to begin making plans for a romantic night on the town. But he takes forever, leaving Marge at home to angrily wait for his return.
Hey, Mom! How about some grub?
Homer comes home hours late, and Marge is ready to tear into him, but her rage immediately stops when he shows her a heart-shaped box of chocolates and a rose. He was gonna get a bouquet, but the thing was $55 a dozen, so forget that. After telling Marge the plan, the two go and get ready for their romantic night out, and not long later, the babysitter, Miss Botts, arrives at their house with suitcases for some reason, and she seems nice.
And you're gonna do what I say, or I'm gonna do something to you. And I don't know what that is, because everybody has always done what I say.
While Marge and Homer go out and have a romantic night filled with fine dining, dancing, and other romantic activities, the kids at home happen to catch an episode of America's Most Armed and Dangerous, featuring the Babysitter Bandit, who turns out to be none other than Miss Botts, aka Lucille Bachowski. Gee, who would have guessed? The kids try to run and hide, but Bachowski catches them and ties them up.
You're a smart young man, Bart. I hope you're smart enough to keep your mouth shut.
He isn't. again.
Luckily for them, though, once Wachowski starts to ransack the place, her thumping around wakes Maggie up, and she heads downstairs to help untie Lisa and Bart. So again, they're either really lucky, or Maggie's just the smartest baby I've ever seen. And now that they're free, Bart and Lisa trick Wachowski into following after Maggie before knocking her out with a baseball bat. And then, the three of them escape after tying her up to report the crime from a payphone.
Is there a reward? If she's convicted, we get t-shirts. Yeah!
However, after Homer and Marge have just finished whatever adults do on date night at a romantic highway-side motel, Marge calls home but no one answers, so they both decide to hurry home and see what's going on. Naturally, they think this is all the kids' fault and untie her, and to make sure there are no hard feelings, Homer carries her surprisingly heavy suitcases for her. Right as Wachowski drives away, a bunch of cop cars and news vans pull up outside their house, and that's when Homer realizes what just happened, like the town idiot that he is.
Have you ever seen a kung fu movie? It was just like that.
Things wrap up with Homer feeling dejected over not being that bright, but Marge comforts him by saying that if he can raise 3 kids capable of knocking out and tying a person up, he must be doing something right, and to be honest, I have to agree. But let me ask you this, what's worse, being robbed by a dangerous criminal, or nearly becoming one yourself? Well, let's see, shall we? The season 19 episode, Dial N for Nerder, begins similarly to how the last episode ended, with Marge and Homer about to get their freak on again, but that quickly gets ruined by Homer being too tired to actually do much of anything. So Marge decides to hire a nutritionist to help Homer settle into a new diet. But with Homer being Homer, he somehow manages to gain weight during the process, and Marge is suspicious.
What? I'm not even gonna dignify that with eye contact.
The kids ride their bikes out to Springfield Park and bump into Martin, who's searching for arrowheads in the dirt. After seeing a sleeping Sideshow Mel, Bart decides to seal the bone in his hair to pull a prank on Martin.
It could be one of the major homos.
You're one of the major.
Forget it.
But in a shocking turn of events, pun definitely intended, the prank results in Martin falling over a guardrail and all the way down a cliff. And to make matters worse, when the kids get home, they see on the news that Martin was apparently eaten by a cougar. Bart realizes this is worse than any trouble he's been in before and wants to confess to what he did. But Lisa realizes that she's an accomplice, and after she imagines what her future might be like,
Got any Joyce Carol Oates?
Nope, it's all Danielle Steele.
Lisa convinces Bart to reluctantly hide the truth. Marge quickly catches them acting suspicious, but before she can intervene, she catches Homer leaving the house in a trench coat. So instead, she focuses on having him followed by a camera crew from a TV show about cheating couples. So, just to recap, suspicious fast talking is outranked by suspicious trenchcoat and hat. Springfield Elementary holds a memorial service for Martin later that day, and while Lisa is busy trying to keep Bart from freaking out, Nelson starts to question the whole thing since he knew Martin was afraid of heights.
Look who's trying to add! You wuss!
While Bart and Lisa struggle with trying to hide their regret at home, Homer sneaks out to cheat on his diet with an entire trompo of lamb meat in a shady motel. Google it, kids. Soon after, Marge finally confronts Homer right before he can scoff a giant bowl of pudding. But weirdly enough, Marge would rather stick with her chubby hubby than split up, which is clearly what the TV producer is trying to do.
Marge, you've given me a lot to think about today. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to the editing room to make you look insane.
Meanwhile, Lisa finds a note in Bart's room saying that he's going to Martin's house to end it all. But it turns out that Bart was just talking about finishing Martin's butterfly project for him. As the butterflies hatch, mysterious lute music plays throughout the tent that confuses them, and she shouts a confession out to the world. Martin suddenly emerges from out of the shadows. He explains that he survived the fall thanks to his underwear's wedgie-proof waistband, which caught on a tree and saved him from hitting the ground hard. They also slingshotted him away from the cougar, because they couldn't exactly have a kid really get eaten, probably. The episode comes to a close, with Lisa realizing she has a dark side to her, and Bart realizing that killing a nerd isn't nearly as fun as you might think. Who would ever think that 2 kids hiding the murder of a 3rd kid would be funny? The Simpsons, that's who. But still, that's pretty dark. But is it as dark as Homer being the reason for his neighbor's death? The season 11 episode Alone Again, Natra-diddly begins with the deceptively peaceful scene of the Simpsons family entering the Springfield Nature Preserve, preparing for a long day of hiking through some beautifully preserved country. Don't worry though, it gets way more exciting from here. The family suddenly hears a strange noise. They first think it's a swarm of angry bees, but when they investigate, they actually end up finding a brand new racetrack. Lisa is worried that the preserve's bird sanctuary has been ruined, but it seems that the animals are adapting just fine to the new surroundings.
Start your engines!
While trying to have a picnic, a car crashes right next to the family. Luckily, the driver, 2-time fast car champion Clay Babcock, escapes unharmed, and he even goes on to give the Simpsons free tickets to the race happening later today. But what surprises them more than the free tickets is the fact that Ned Flanders and the rest of the family are also attending the race, but Ned's more interested in the safety equipment than the actual racing. After watching for a while, a group of attractive women come out with t-shirt cannons and start firing them into the crowd. Homer takes off his shirt and starts yelling at the women, desperate for a shirt. Maude can only handle so much of Homer's naked torso, so she gets up to get some hot dogs.
Maude?
Ned looks off the side of the stands, just as Dr. Hibbert shockingly declares that Maude Flanders has died. We see a few headstones of other Simpsons characters who have died up to this point, such as Frank Grimes, as we pan over to Maude's funeral service, which features a tasteful 21 t-shirt gun salute, courtesy of the racetrack's generosity. There's a time and a place, guys. After the funeral service and the reception, Homer walks Ned home and helps him get to sleep, and actually shows genuine care for Ned while he's at it.
Sleep tight, Ned.
But later in the evening, Ned wakes up Homer by tossing pebbles at his window so they can talk. Ned regrets that his last words to Maude were "no footlongs" and blames himself for Maude's death since he could have gotten the hot dogs instead. But after Homer reminds him that it was only mostly his fault, he decides to help Ned out in the best way he can think of, by spending the next few months secretly filming Ned to make him a dating video. He couldn't get all of Maggie's birth off the tape, so just ignore that part.
Ned Flanders, the man with the chest.
Ew.
Obviously, Ned thinks it's too soon to start dating again, but after another night of realizing how lonely he feels, he eventually caves and puts the tape into a postbox. Later, Ned goes through the video matchmaking tapes of the women who were interested in him. Funny enough, one of the women happens to be Edna Krabappel, but none of these dates go well in the end. It finally gets to the point where Ned gets angry at God for taking Maude from him, and he even decides that he's gonna skip going to church the next morning. This could be the most shocking part of this video.
You just watch. Sorry.
When he finally decides not to miss it, he's just in time to see Covenant, a Christian rock band that's covering for the usual organist. And to his surprise, he actually enjoys the song, but he enjoys the lead singer, Rachel Jordan, even more, both spiritually and physically. After the service, Ned helps Rachel load her equipment into her van and strikes up a conversation, and it turns out their attraction is mutual. The episode ends on a lighter note with them agreeing to maybe go out for a coffee when Rachel comes back from a music tour, and Ned saying that he'll be at the church every week, rain or shine. Speaking of the Simpsons family being caught up in someone's death, this next one we almost had a repeat when we had to wait a whole summer to find out who shot Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns is in the hospital after getting shot, and the police begin looking for clues about who did it here in part 2 of Who Shot Mr. Burns. The episode begins with the police trying to find a lead by interrogating the only nearby witnesses. After waking up from being blackout drunk, Mr. Smithers wanders the streets wondering if it was him who committed the crime. After finding a recently fired gun in his coat, Smithers has a vision of him maybe shooting Burns. Overcome with guilt, he tries to confess at church, but that just makes things worse.
I'm the one who shot Mr. Burns.
All I needed to hear. Boy, this thing works great.
But after getting taken into custody by the cops, Sideshow Mel recognizes a joke Smithers made on the news, and Mel tells them that Smithers couldn't have been there at the time of Burns' shooting. He did shoot Jasper though, but it was just on his wooden leg, so it's fine. From Moe and Barney over losing the bar, to Principal Skinner and the school losing money over Burns stealing his oil well, and even groundskeeper Willie losing out on his dream of getting a crystal slop bucket. And his job, but mostly the bucket. While the police are looking through the suspects and getting to see way more than they bargained for,
This is your last warning about that.
Grandpa secretly caresses his old revolver, which used to be hidden in a cigar box buried in the yard. The obvious question is, why would he dig up the gun now, of all times? Or, well, in the last episode, anyway. Mr. Burns suddenly shoots up from his coma, screaming the name Homer Simpson, and the cops waste no time in raiding the Simpson home, where they find further evidence, the gun under the driver's seat in Homer's car. And not only does the gun have Homer's prints on it, but the bullet also matches the one that was removed from Burns' body, so the police arrest Homer right then and there.
Yeah, that's what they all say. They all say dough.
Luckily for Homer, Chief Wiggum decides to go to Krusty Burger on the way to the station. And because the paddy wagon is too tall, and because Wiggum is too, well, fat, the thing ends up rolling over and Homer is able to escape. We also briefly see Dr. Nick talking to Burns, where he makes the strange discovery that Burns wasn't accusing Homer at all.
Hi, everybody.
Ho, Miss Simp, son.
Okay, that was a little strange.
But everyone else in town is too busy to hear this, as Smithers has just put a $50,000 bounty on Homer, sending Springfield wild. When news spreads that Homer was spotted at the hospital, everyone races over to the scene to find Homer shaking Burns, trying to get Burns to stop accusing him. But it turns out that wasn't what was happening at all, which only makes things worse, actually.
Who is this beast that's shaking me?
Luckily, Burns laughs off the thought that Homer was the one who shot him, and instead looks around the room and reveals that the real shooter was, in fact,
Maggie Simpson.
As it turns out, what really happened was that Burns was literally trying to take candy from a baby by attempting to steal a lollipop from Maggie. But Burns wasn't strong enough to do it, being so hilariously weak and all. The gun that shot him was Burns' own gun, which fell from his side holster onto Maggie's lap and fired by itself. The episode then comes to a close with Marge sure that Maggie would say sorry if she could talk, while Maggie just looks around suspiciously. But hey, you can't arrest a baby. I don't think anyone thought it would be Maggie, but can this be more shocking than torturing your own brother after he was almost killed? We get Flanders' ladder underway when Bart tricks Lisa into playing that classic jump scare maze game, the one from that video that everyone's seen by now, after which Lisa swears that she'll get revenge on Bart one way or another. The family tries to fill in the lack of internet by watching old VCR tapes in the meantime, but that soon stops when the tape in the VCR explodes. So instead, after realizing that Flanders still has his internet, Homer and Bart decide to steal his Wi-Fi router for themselves. This is where the ladder comes into play, which Bart has to climb because Homer is too fat for the thing to support him. And it goes well at first, but then Bart nearly falls off. And if you thought that was bad enough... At the hospital, Dr. Hibbert thankfully says that Bart will be fine in time, but he also says that lightning victims are highly suggestible. At first, Lisa just feels bad for Bart, but after remembering before, she decides to get revenge by messing with Bart's coma dream so that he sees dead people. But not like that other kid, for legal reasons. While comatose, Bart wakes up thinking that everything is fine until he suddenly encounters the ghost of Maude Flanders. Scared that he's being haunted, Bart is convinced by Milhouse, of all people, to try talking out his problems with a therapist. But that only makes things worse when Bart realizes that the therapist is a ghost too, after finding his corpse behind the sofa. What kind of therapist offs himself just to mess with their patients? This one, apparently. The therapist tells Bart that with this gift, he can help the dead move on, which he does by helping the guy get revenge on another doctor using that same stupid jump scare maze from before.
Thank you, Bart. Now I can move on.
But now all the other ghosts around town want Bart to help them move on as well, leading Bart to start helping solve all of their unfinished beefs. In the real world, a worried Lisa learns that messing with coma patients, like how she's been doing, could result in permanent damage to his brain, maybe even kill him. So make sure your family isn't mad at you if you ever decide to get struck by lightning. In his dream, Maude's ghost tells Bart that her unfinished business is to get revenge on Homer. So, because we're working on dream logic here, Bart gets the town bullies to get revenge on Homer by assaulting him with t-shirt cannons. And while Maude is finally able to move on, mostly...
You know Ned remarried.
He what?
To his shock, it turns out Homer was killed during the prank, and while Bart pleads for Homer's ghost to stay with him, Lisa is begging for Bart to stay with her in the real world. As Homer's ghost starts to move on, Bart starts to flatline. In a moment that's actually really pretty sad if you think about it, Lisa cries while saying she loves her brother. But it seems this was just what Bart needed to finally awake from his coma. The episode comes to a close, with Bart saying he saw how they're all going to die, and we see a quick montage of various Springfield characters biting the big one, which is both humorous and gives us a pretty weird feeling to watch all these characters, actually die. Either way, if you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe and let me know what shocking plot lines you remember from The Simpsons in the comments below.